And there is a lovely old gateway, the Sedlescombe church. Looks as though it's out of use now. The church is a Grade 2 listed building, and let's go and take a closer look. Well, Parish Church of St John the Baptist. It says circa 13th century, but mainly 15th century, I think, with some 18th century additions. It's not going to be very easy to film in here because well, the sun isn't actually up yet, but you can certainly see there's some very old tombstones here. There's a couple of late, I say late, they were done in the very late 19th century, about 1890, stained glass windows by a well-known artist called Kemp. And reading up about the church, the interesting thing I notice, and this doesn't appear to be ironstone, this appears to be possibly sandstone. So what do I know? I'm just treading very carefully because there's lots of moss between the bricks. Oh yes, now what was I saying? Reading up, there's a ring of 6 bells here, and the first bell apparently arrived in, I think it was the 16th century, and it had later additions in the 17th and 18th, but the final bell wasn't put into position until 1929 apparently, which I find rather interesting. This certainly is not a really ancient door, is it? But interesting to see the Star of David above the door though. You'd almost be forgiven for thinking it was a synagogue, I guess. But then of course, as has happened in so many cases, oh! I don't know if you saw that. There's a rabbit just run across between the graves. And he's just gone across in the distance there. What was I saying? Yes, unfortunately, religion has spoilt faith. Sorry, but it has. And I'm trying to find a nice shot here because the sun, where am I going, is coming up. And it's coming up between those trees there. And I just thought I had to get that shot in. And that's one of the reasons why I like coming up here early in the morning. The mist is in the fields down there. And Le Lapin has disappeared. There, what was I saying about the church? Well, as you may or may not have gathered, The church is actually quite some distance from what is now the village. I'm standing up here, and although there's the old vicarage next to it, it's nearly a mile down the road until you actually get to the bridge, which is really what I've come looking for as part of my Bridges of the Three Rivers of Rye series. But again, the topography of the land changes over the years, and you've got to think to yourself that when a lot of these churches were built, there was forest, but there was mainly agricultural land, and so I'm guessing that a lot of these trees, although they've got a good age to them, they maybe weren't here when the church was built. And so, as is so often the case, the church bells would ring to summon the worshippers, and the church being in a prominent place at the top of the hill, people could see it for miles around, and it would be like a beacon to bring them to worship. And over the years since then, of course, the trees have grown, and this church is actually now quite secluded. But having said that, look at the girth on that. What a lovely tree. If only you could talk, Mr. Tree. You would tell me that I'm probably talking a load of garbage here. And maybe I am. All I can say to you viewers is that I am aware so many people do walking videos these days, and they're of various types. Some, there's no commentary, it's just silent. Others blast you with loud music. I've tried to move mine on a bit. I like to think my style is a bit more unique than some. Yeah, when I'm on holiday and I go on coach trips and things like that, yeah, I probably don't know much about the area. So you'll get in the video very much as I see it, and I give a little commentary as I walk round, because I like to think that my walkumentaries are such that you feel you're walking next to me. But I think when I do these projects like I have done this year, it has been important for me to do research, and I tell you what, it's made it really interesting for me, and I hope I conveyed some of that across to you as well. I found I needed to learn a bit more of the history of the area and what went on around, because otherwise there could have been some very bland videos, and the last thing I want to do is to bore the pants off people. Now this tree here, these are Spanish chestnuts, as I found out, and this one here, and as I said to you before, parts date back to the 13th century, most comes back to the 15th century. And I've just seen a fact which tells me that these trees, these Spanish chestnuts, were planted when this current building was dedicated in 1632. But I have to touch the tree, don't I? Blessed tree. 1632. Wow. I am touching a tree that is nearly 400 years old. And I feel it's a privilege. And I just spotted this little beauty tucked in beside the garage there. The old thatch house. And there is the date on the wall, 1509. Definitely one of the oldest houses in Sedlescombe, and one of very, very few that has the thatch roof. Put that on your chocolate box at Christmas. I had to come closer to this lovely building. Look at these lovely roses here. I don't want to disturb the residents. And that's an interesting... They call it Kester House. I don't know whether that's meant to be a feather or an old blacksmith's implement. But there's the bridge garage. It could well be on the side of an old forge. I know behind it there was a watermill which ground corn until about 1790, when it was replaced by a gunpowder works, which supposedly made the finest gunpowder in Europe. Yes, as I say, the finest gunpowder in Europe. But there was a nasty accident about 3 or 4 years after it opened, when there was a huge explosion, and I think 4 people got killed. But it just goes to show you all the different types of industry that used to go on here. Now, there's a lady just gone walking past me with a dog, so I don't think I'll film while I'm walking along, but I'm going to move on now to the actual subject of this film, the bridge. And just in case you didn't know that it was here, these are the River Brede cottages, which lead on to the bridge itself. Just looking down towards the corner there's a little driveway that comes out. Doesn't look much, and it's a bit dangerous for me to go and film on that corner, but that's the entrance to the Pestalozzi village, named after a Swiss gentleman called Johann Pestalozzi, which very strange combination of name. It's like he was born with one foot in the German-speaking canton and another foot in an Italian-speaking canton. But his methods or his principles of education were brought here in late 1950s, when the school was opened to bring European students here to experience an English education and higher education. And the idea was that they would take what they've learned and their aspirations for their country back home and do good for their country. Over the years it's progressed, and it's now, it then developed. We had students here from developing countries, Nepal, Tibet, that kind of place. Over recent years the whole ethos has changed. It's become the Pestalozzi International Foundation, and I'm finding information on it very hard to get, but it would seem that they now take from those same countries only children who are very well educated but are not very well off, let's put it that way, and they bring them here to go to college and study for something that they call the International Baccalaureate. They start here for their higher education and then they move across to Wales. And apparently that's how it works these days. Now, I'm standing on the bridge designed by John Catt in the 19th century, and this is Sedlescombe Bridge. There's a drainage hole there and a set of steps going down, which might just indicate, or it certainly shows how narrow the river had got by then. The Brede has an interesting history. When I was a kid on the farm over in Battle, the river went through, and you'll have seen it on my documentary Back to the Farm. where I wanted to go down and have a look but couldn't get down there. The river started off up in Netherfield Way, and we always knew it as the River Brede in those days, but for some reason that's now called the Line, and it's on the maps now as the River Line until it gets to a point about 500 or 600 yards west of here, and then it becomes the River Brede. So I am more or less now at the beginning of the modern day River Brede. Not much to look at, is it? But, you do wonder how wide it was at one time, because the sea didn't come this far up to the best of my knowledge. But with all this industry going on, the Romans I think had a thing about building ports. Every time they hit a navigable river or a bit of sea, they built a port there, so it seemed. And so this must have been quite wide up to this point, because there is evidence that a lot of stuff went in and out of here, produce, groceries, and more than likely products of the iron industry, and more than likely some of the gunpowder. But there it is today, not really very much to look at, is it? So now we whip back across the other side of the road, because it is beginning to get very busy indeed on the roads. This pedestrian bit is obviously a much later addition, and I'm looking to see if there's a stone here. No, there's not a commemorative stone. That's a pretty solid construction though when you look at it, but it now funnels the river. Although you can see evidence, you see the banks on either side, which suggests that at one time the river was higher and wider here. And some of these trees have excuse me, fallen over. But unlike the Rother at its furthest reaches, there's quite a flow on this one. And of course it's come down from Netherfield, round through Beach Farm, then it doubles back on itself up through Mountfield, cuts across the new A21, down through the bottom of Watlington Hill, and then under the main road from Hastings to Hawkehurst and London, and then cuts down through here. Not very deep. And although this is the last bit that I'm filming, when I get to the River Brede, this will actually form the first film, because as you know I'm working my way from inland towards the sea. But I think it very fitting that I should actually finish, well, nearly finish my very last piece of filming with a look at what is a very lovely sunrise over a peaceful village green. This is typical English rural scene. We're only, what, 7 miles from Hastings? Yeah, it's busy, isn't it? What a lovely, lovely setting to end this video on. And as you can see, the river winds its way. It's got a nice line of trees beside it, which means it's not really worth me walking across the field there. I ain't going to get any closer to the river. But just imagine we're moving down. The next bridge we come to is the river, the Brede Bridge, and that will be the next film that you see in the sequence.